We have. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special meeting of council held at 6 p.m. on March 23rd. I'd like to acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukanamakas, the unceded traditional territory of Yakit. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakit and are members of the Ktunaxa speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I will call the meeting to order and note that this meeting is being conducted by electronic means in accordance with the council procedure bylaw number 2446. And I will ask for a mover and seconder for the following recommendation: that if the communication link to the specified place for this meeting is interrupted and cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting shall adjourn and reconvene to the soonest possible time that quorum can be achieved and public notice requirements met. Moved by Councilor McIsaac, seconded by Councilor Ramadas. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now ask for a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda. Councilor Audia Kelly, seconded by Councilor Smith. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Which brings us to item number 4, bylaws and a report from our Director of Finance. Mr. Burden.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Hello, Council. Great. You can all see that okay? Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you. Tonight, I intend to speak very briefly, providing an update for Council and the public on the Growing Communities Fund grant, and again, showing the tables that make up the financial plan bylaw that's presented tonight for third reading. This is our timeline for the 2023 budget process, and as you can see, we're almost at the end of our schedule. Assuming third reading happens tonight, the next thing on our schedule is next Tuesday, where we will adopt the financial plan bylaw. Just again, a quick update for Council on what we've heard since the last meeting with respect to the Growing Communities Fund. Fernie is to be awarded just over 2.6 million, which is obviously good news. The province has shared some extra details, but it's definitely in line with what they initially said, in that these funds should be used for capital projects instead of funding ongoing operations. And then there's a list of eligible projects there. That's not a complete list. That's just some of the items that were on the list. Most notable of the recent details is that the funds must be placed in a segregated reserve fund, separate from our other reserve funds. And so because of that, I will bring forward a reserve fund bylaw amendment on April 11th, alongside the scheduled tax rate bylaw as well. This slide was presented to Council at last week's meeting, and it makes up our 5-year revenue plan. And there's been no changes to this table since that March 14th meeting. Here is the expenses table. That's also part of the bylaw, up for a third reading tonight. And again, no changes from last week's meeting. And lastly, this slide details our capital plan, debt, and transfers to and from reserves. This also has not changed since last week's meeting. This slide and the revenue slide, however, will change when it comes time to do a 2023 budget bylaw amendment for the Growing Communities Grant Fund, but we can't do that amendment or adjust this bylaw until we have the reserve fund created for the purpose it's intended for. And again, next steps, assuming third reading tonight, we intend to adopt next Tuesday, and then following adoption of financial plan, that will then lead to the next annual bylaw required in the community charter, which is the tax rate bylaw. And alongside that bylaw, I'll also be presenting reserve fund amendment bylaw for the Growing Communities Fund. And thanks for your time. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burdick. Any questions for Director Burdick? Seeing none, I'll ask Mr. McConnell if you could read the recommendation.
Certainly, Your Worship, that council provide the third reading of 5-year financial plan 2023-2027, bylaw number 2487, 2023.
I ask for a mover, Councillor Hamilton, seconder, Councillor McIsaac. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed?
And just for the record, as Councilor Stu Smith, Councilor Fernie, and Councilor Claudia Kelly opposed. That is correct. Thank you.
And with that, I will adjourn the special meeting of council.
Councilor Nixon, have a question.
Councillor Nixon, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just had a question for Director Burdick in regards to that Growing Communities Fund, and it doesn't have anything to do with the budget, but do we have any inkling why the province would announce this at such a strange time while all these communities are actually coming through with their before the deadline? Does anybody have any idea why they would do this?
Mr. Borowski, you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I suspect it has more to do with the provincial year end at the end of this month and having to allocate, confirm and allocate funds, commit funds by their year end than it does with the municipal context.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I will call to order the committee of the whole for tonight, March 21st, 2023. And once again, acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded traditional territory of the Yakitat. And we recognize that we live and work within the vast lands. The Kanahunik are from Yakitat and are members of the Tanaha speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I'll call this meeting to order. And that it is being conducted by in-person and electronic means in accordance with council procedure bylaw number 2446. And ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that is a communication link to the specified place where this meeting is interrupted and cannot be restored within 15 minutes. The meeting shall adjourn and reconvene to the soonest possible time that quorum can be achieved and public notice requirements met. Mover, Councillor Ramdass, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. I now will ask for a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda and any late items.
Your Worship, before you ask for that, I believe we were going to ask you to move to amend the agenda such that item 6.
Yeah, please.
All right, so the request is that the agenda be approved subject to item 6.5 being voted.
Councillor Hamilton moves. Councillor McIsaac seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. I'll now ask for the adoption of the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on February 21st, 2023. Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Claudia Kelly, any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, excluding matters for which speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the issuance of the permit. And a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And so I will ask our specified place if there's anybody wishing to speak.
No, your worship, no one wishing to speak at the specified place.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. With that, we'll move on to delegations and other presentations. Item 6.1, we have a presentation from Crown Mountain Coking Coal Project by Mr. Dave Baker.
Your worship, sorry to interrupt. There was a late online participant wishing to speak. Christopher Bruce.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes.
Your worship, this matters on the committee of the whole agenda
Yeah.
and not on the special council meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McConnell. I just would like to stress that point that public participation is for items listed on the committee of the whole agenda and not for those items listed on the special meeting which just concluded. So go ahead, Mr. Inglis.
Yes, Council, Mayor and Council, can you hear me, audio?
We can.
Yes, just have a couple comments about the budget. Is it appropriate to say those comments now that it's on the agenda?
It's not on the agenda for this meeting, Mr. Inglis. It's on the agenda next week. March 28th is on the agenda, and there is the public participation period next week to comment on the budget.
Okay, I appreciate your time. Thanks for the clarification.
No,
Have a good night.
You too. And I'll just check again, Ms. Rhodes, is there anyone else who's expressed interest?
No, no one else wishing to speak.
Thanks so much. That will bring us back to item 6.1, presentation from the Crown Mountain Coking Coal Project, Mr. Dave Baker.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm excited to get a chance to show you a update on the Crown Mountain Coking Coal Project. I trust you are seeing my screen.
We are, Mr. Baines, thank you.
Excellent. So my agenda for tonight is to give you a little overview of the project. I believe some of the councillors not familiar with the project, and some of you could probably do with a refresh. I'm also going to speak a little bit to our project development plan to tell you how we hope to evolve the project, how it all fits together. Give you an update on our regulatory process, because there's certainly been some changes along the way and hiccups, and it's always fun to understand. And last but not least, and most importantly, I think, is an Indigenous update about how we're progressing with our Indigenous engagement. So for project overview, the Crown Mountain Coking Coal Project is located just a little bit to the northeast of Sparwood. So on that figure you're seeing on your screen, Sparwood is in the lower left. The darker gray area is the Elk View Mine. And that's right beside Sparwood and just over the ridge from our project. And we're just down the valley from Lion Creek. So you can see the grayish blob to the center top screen there. That's Lion Creek. And in the red circle, that's our project area. We have about 30 million tons of clean coal there. That's the same seams that are the good money seams at Elkview. So they're 8, 9, 10 seams. We have right near the surface really low overburden, really low strip ratios. We've designed our project to get at that 30 million tons of clean coal at about 2 million tons a year, which gives us about 15 years of operation. And that's the project in a nutshell. So what is that going to look like? Well, I have some really fancy 3D software I could fly you through, but it tends to crash Zoom and Facebook meetings, so I did screen captures instead. On this image, you should be seeing the ridge that is Erickson Ridge down the center of the photograph. And again, on the right side, that is Elkview Mine, and just off a little further to the right is Sparwood. The small ridge or mountain just to the left of Erickson Ridge, that is Crown Mountain. So let's look at this again from the south. Erickson Ridge again is now on the left side of your screen, heading up towards Lion Creek, the gray blob there. Just off the tip of the screen, you can see Elkview in the top left corner. And the ridge in the center of your screen is, again, Crown Mountain. That's our project area. So we plan to develop that over a couple of phases. First phase ends sort of in year 4. That's when the project's at its smallest. We put our plant site right on the saddle of the ridge between water that drains towards Grave Creek and out to the Elk River that way, and water that drains south down the West Alexander into Alexander Creek and then into Michelle and into the Elk River as well. Our north pit is only about a 4-year pit, so this is when it's at its maximum depth. Our east pit, which is the second gray blob there, that one only runs for about 2 years. So it's not at full depth yet at year 4, but it's well on the way. And the dark black is the waste rock spoil that'll be right adjacent to the plant. That cuts our haul distances down as much as possible to reduce dust, to reduce diesel use and emissions. It also means that we can use the coarse coal reject out of the plant and the fine tailings out of the plant as part of our selenium management plan. I'm not going to talk about that at length today, but that's sort of the reason it's all close together like that. Another good reason to have it close together is you can see our settling pond right tucked up against the edge of the waste rock area. Right here, this is our waste rock pond, or pardon me, settling pond. So that first 4 years, every drop of rain or snow that lands on any of the pits or on the waste rock pile or the plant ends up in that little pond there. So it keeps our footprint really tight for the first couple of years. I think another neat thing to see in this image is our north pit is in a syncline. So the shape of the pit is a syncline. We've exposed it to air on 4 sides, and there's no more coal to get out of that one. Year 10 is the next big milestone. That's when we fully backfilled that north pit, backfilled the east pit, and gotten our south pit up and running. You could see in this figure that we've already started to do reclamation efforts on the edges of facilities, because the way we've designed things can be left alone, started to be contoured, start to be soil added, start vegetation as early as possible, and progress away from the reclamation instead of reusing things over and over again. Looking at it from the south, you can see that our south pit has 3 benches in it. Again, really nice short hauls to the waste rock storage area, downhill hauls for the most part, and a compact site. We have a new settling pond down at the very south end now. This is where the drainage from the West Alexander Creek heads towards Alexander Creek. And this pond will capture all groundwater, all runoff, and really make it simple, because that's where the groundwater and surface water is already collecting because of a natural pinch point in the valley. By year 15, the big difference is how much of the site we've already been able to reclaim. And the pit is at its maximum depth, because year 15 is the end of our project's operational life. You can see these lifts in our main stockpile. Those are about 30 to 40 meter lifts. This zigzaggy construction, this is what engineers do to make sure we understand the volume of material we have to move and the volume of storage we need, number of trucks we need, that sort of thing. In no way is it going to look like this. It will be curved, it will be natural. We're going to do workshops with the Yakut Nucleate and others to figure out the way to blend this into the natural landscape as much as we can and build microclimates, build micro ecosystems to really bring it back to as natural as we can and bring the wildlife back and make it useful for hunting, make it useful for recreation, make it useful for traditional uses. And that's essentially what it looks like in a closure phase, everything revegetated, except for this main pond, which we have to keep for a very long time until we can prove that all the water coming off site meets release criteria. Once that happens, we would reclaim that settling pond as a wetland. There is land set aside beside the settling pond. If we need to go to an active treatment system, we're working that into the plans. We've got space for it. We've got plans to go there if we need it. So as a regulatory update, our project's old enough. We started under the BC Environmental Assessment Act of 2002. We started in 2014. It took the government 4 years to give us direction on how to write the assessment and what our value components are and so on. We've collected all that data, done the assessments, pulled together documents, and at this point, it's essentially ready for review, except we had to switch from the old act to the new act. So let's look at that new act. These are the steps in the new act. They're really quite similar to the old act. As I said, we're at the point where we have an application ready to go to the government, and they're accepting that all those earlier steps we did will count as being completed under that 2002 Act, and we don't have to move backwards. We also are doing an assessment under the Federal Act. This one's a lot busier. Good news is we don't have to do a review panel, so it simplifies things. We started this again back in 2014. Federal government only took 1 year to give us their guidelines on how they wanted the application put together and what they wanted us to assess. And we're actually in review with the federal government already in what process they call conformity review. We've done 2 rounds of that and hope to any day now be ready to go into the technical review and public comment period. And to try and make sense of all that, the federal government and the provincial government have gotten together and written this new flow chart up for operating under the new BC Act, but the old Federal Act, because we're the first project in the entire province to do it this way. I think the only real take home for you folks here is that sort of our next big step is this public comment period and going into information response cycles. The new BC Act requires submission of a new assessment. So you rewrite the whole document, and then you go into a loop where the government and the First Nations are working together and the company doesn't have much to do anymore. So an update on Indigenous engagement. We are engaging directly with Yakut Nucleate, as well as the entire Ktunaxa Nation Council Society, Shuswap Band, BC Métis, Alberta Métis, and all of Treaty 7. We've had pretty good regular meetings with most of those folks and even set up scheduled meetings monthly so we can get to know each other better and understand each other's concerns and how we can build a better project. And also, I'm excited to say the majority of those folks have actually come out to our site and had us look around. The folks that haven't are talking about what we can do this year. Last but not least, our big highlight is in January of this year, we signed an agreement with Yakut Nucleate to honor their convincing evidence that the Elk Valley is their Indigenous lands. They have Indigenous title to these lands, and as such, we think we should treat them as if they have an inherent right to govern those lands and regulate those lands. So we've signed a deal that says we will work towards their consent, and we need their consent or we will not proceed with our project. And that's my whole presentation. I went 2 minutes over. Thank you for your forbearance.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. It wasn't forbearance, we didn't start a timer. Any questions for Mr. Baines? Seeing none. Thanks very much for your time, and we look forward to the more to come. Is at the end of the business engagement slide.
Thank you for the chance to give you an update, and we're excited about what's coming next.
Take care. Right,
No, I missed that.
that'd be picky, but we should actually put that in definitions.
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, in the applications.
That brings us to item number 6.2. Fernie Heritage Library. Our library director, Anna Dressler. Before you start, I apologize, I didn't send a post around yet.
He did inform us about it.
Okay,
So, step one.
step one. Can you see me properly?
Yes.
Okay, so good evening, your worship, council, city staff. I'm very pleased to be here in front of you and of course to all of the members of the community watching. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my favorite place, Fernie Heritage Library. Some of you have heard me speak about the library many times. Some of you, this might be your first time. I will do my best to speak slowly and clearly. My tendency is I get excited and I sometimes speak a bit quickly, so I'm going to try and go slowly. And if you have any questions after, I'd be delighted to answer any questions at all. The first thing I thought I would do this evening is just give a very quick chat, a little bit of background about the library. And this is particular for anyone watching this evening or if anyone is newer. First thing I would say is our mission. We've just reviewed our strategic plan, and our new mission is the Fernie Heritage Library is a library for everyone to learn, share, and build community. The key thing there is being a library for everyone. We've been a registered charity since 1920, and there has been library service in the community since 1899. Some things say 1898, but definitely since 1899. So that's a really long time at having a public library in this community. In British Columbia, public libraries are governed under the Library Act. This is important because sometimes people will say, oh, why don't you charge for this or do this? And it's like, we can't. We're part of it. We fall under the Library Act. And it's an important thing to remember. They have been talking about revising the Library Act since 1998, but it hasn't happened. Then in 2008, they started the process and stopped again. So at some point it will be revised, but I don't think it'll be revised. The province of BC, as I said, we're under the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. So in my time in the library, we've been bounced around under many municipalities, or many ministries, but currently we're under the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. It's an important thing to remember. They oversee governance and accountability around libraries. As such, we are part of the provincial library system and with the goal of providing a seamless library service to everyone in the community. In anywhere you live in the province, in theory, you should have one card, one library. It doesn't totally work that way, but that is the goal. And it's something that we spend a lot of time and energy trying to make happen. Particularly important for our community members living in a more remote part of the province. They should have access to the same resources and information as people in larger metropolitan centers. The province of BC, as they do, they recognize libraries as an important part of the government's role in making life better and more affordable. Recently, the Premier stated, libraries are vital community and learning hubs, valued for embracing diversity and providing trusted information and services. Public libraries are the heart of communities. Libraries help to future-proof communities by providing and supporting lifelong learning and providing a space and a place for communities to come together. So those are important things to remember. We're free, we're neutral, we're open, we're accessible places. And those are core values. And these are things to keep in mind, and this is what we do. From an accountability point of view, obviously tonight I'm standing in front of you. I'm giving a quick update. We provide our financials. We provide an update on what we're doing to support the work of the community. However, we also provide many reports. We provide to the province. We update them 4 times a year. A variety of different types of reporting tools. We do SOPI. We do We do reports on all of our numbers. We provide data points, over 400 data points to the province every year, plus stories and things like this. We also provide information to the regional district every year as one of our partners as well. We have, like all governmental bodies and organizations, we have to follow FOIPA. The new privacy regulations that were updated last year, we have to implement those. We have the same privacy obligations as you do. So that's an important thing to remember for how we operate. So currently we're working on revising and updating all of our procedures and policies. We also, like you do, have to have an accessibility plan in place by the end of August of this year. So I'm currently part of a provincial group right now working on an accessibility plan for our library. We support truth and reconciliation, an important thing of what we do, by providing Indigenous story times, Indigenous materials, hosting at least one Indigenous author every year, and providing an opportunity for the public to learn materials, to learn about the community. Overseeing the library, there's a management board, which is myself, and then a volunteer board of trustees. We have professional staff who are highly trained and deliver incredible service and programming to the community. The staff are unionized and part of their own QB local. We also have, as well as the staff and our trustees, volunteers are an important part of our library team. And our volunteers help to bring community perspective to what we do and to deliver service and programming in the community. Our values, belonging and inclusivity, the idea of a library being for everyone, respect and professionalism, innovation and creativity. Part of some of those things you can see with our makerspace, using eScan or self-checkout stations, working together in collaboration. Just example of a couple partnerships, our work with Seaball in settlement office, and also the Elk Valley Suicide Task Force. Those are just two or newer partnerships this year. We're solution focused and responsive. And that was really demonstrated in our response to the pandemic and all of the ways that we've updated and changed and revised and reviewed every aspect of our operations. Mentioning about community impact, I want to say thank you to your support. And because of your support, we're able to positively impact the community. We provide library service and programming to all members of the community. And I have in the little report that I sent, the update, you've seen some of the numbers, but I'm just going to highlight a few more of them. We, in Bringing Together, we bring the library together, we help people access information and resources, and we partner with other groups. We're a key part of the social infrastructure of the community. So currently, over 4,100 people have active cards in Fernie. So what that means, this is an important number, those are people who have been physically into the library. Those are not people who've accessed our ebooks or e-audiobooks. Those are people who have physically been in the library in the year 2022. So that's a high number, over 4,100 people. Of those, over 900 children in Fernie, so under the age of 15, have library cards. Over in 2022, over 77,000 items circulated in our community, and another 6,000 items circulated through interlibrary loans. Those are quite large numbers. Over 37,000 people visited the library in 2022. So 37,000, that's quite a large number of people again too. We are almost up to, we're not quite, but we're getting to our pre-pandemic numbers. So those are really large numbers. In 2022, we had 133 class visits because part of the year classes were not able to come into the library, but already this year we've had 84. Over 2,500 people used our computers and 18,000 questions answered, and over 2,500 people attended programs. So those are some big numbers. And if you ever want any information on how we get those, I'd love to share it with you or break anything else down for you. So I just wanted to mention a couple things like for families, the ways we support families, obviously through our programming, through books, through materials, through homework help. One of the things we don't think about is the fact that many people in the community do not have proper internet access at home. They don't have printers. We print homework for children for free. We help children do their homework. We help teachers get materials for their classes, things like that. Seniors, we help them access information, accessing resources. Part of it's social connections. We have seniors who come into the library every day to, might not sound like something you think about, but to log on and play their computer games. Whatever the case may be, this is part of their socialization. It's part of being part of the community. Through teens, we're very fortunate. We're the legal entity for the Fernie Youth Action Network, and we provide exceptional teen programming, and also place our teens to spend time together and learn and build connections, which is a really good program because it's bringing together teens who are homeschooled and at all of the local schools, and they're coming together and making connections and doing some good work.
2 minutes, Mr. Russell.
What?
2 minutes.
Crikey, okay. all of you quickly. So we have a volunteer treasurer. Of course, we're run by board of trustees and a paid bookkeeper. GPI oversees our accounts. I have provided a high list of our, kind of an overview of the numbers. We will provide the approved financials after our AGM, so they'll say draft. Daryl wanted me to make sure I said draft. Same thing with the budget after our AGM that will be approved. Biggest change for our budget in 2023 is an increase to the salaries line item. Okay, one of the things that we did some serious work with the board in the end of 2022 was an environmental scan looking at what our staff were paid. And we did make some changes with our circulation staff because we had the majority of our circulation staff were being paid at minimum wage, which is not right in any way, shape, or form. So we have changed, circulation staff have been able to change. So that's an important thing. So when you look at our budget, that is the biggest change to 2023. In addition, because the province is now looking at the 2021 census numbers rather than 2016, the number of funds coming from the province has increased a little. Just want to point that out. When we look to the future, so going really quick, looking to the future, biggest things to think about this year, we're working on strengthening staff, obviously training our staff, and we have a lot of new staff members, getting them feeling as comfortable and provide so they can provide that service that we want to. We're all doing different training. I just recently completed a business continuity planning program through the Justice Institute. Really interesting work. All of the staff have been taking training on managing hostile interactions. Community has changed. We need to make sure we can do this. And also staff taking training on diversity and inclusion. We're actively promoting the library, solidifying our financial resources, and doing some needs assessment because things have changed in the past few years and we need to make sure we continue. And our board of trustees is a big focus to actually strengthen that. Quickly, nuts and bolts, makerspace. We had our soft launch in 2022. This year we have a lot more programming happening. Every month you'll see more programming happening. The reading garden, in our garden, more things happening with the different furniture outside. Library Square, Wednesdays, see things happening. Privacy plan we're getting in place right now, reviewing, and our accessibility plan. Thank you for your ongoing support. We appreciate the support we've had from the city. We appreciate partnering with you. And we have a shared goal. We are supporting this community. We're trying to make the community the strongest, most beautiful, inclusive, wonderful, welcoming place we can. And we're helping to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Excellent. Any questions?
I am. Thanks very much. That was awesome. I just wondered about our numbers, like is the 4,100, is that just within town or is that through the whole area?
The 4,100 is the city of Fernie and also includes part of area A and part of area B.
Thank you.
So yes.
I did want to comment that when my kids were home for Christmas and I mentioned the podcasting setup that you have down in the library basement, that was part of the makerspace. Oh, where was that? 5 years ago. They were delighted. So thank you for that. Yeah, excellent work in the community. Around that.
Same question as Councilor Already. So now I have another question. Was wondering like kind of usage the makerspace is getting and who are the people who contribute the most?
So far,
Sorry.
Mayor Milligan, can I answer?
Yeah, please.
So far, the makerspace, we have been doing in the actual digitization programming and using 3D printers and modeling. So we're for adults. We are going to start running some more children's programming in there, but right now, or teens, but right now it's been adults. And it's primarily, I would say, from a demographic perspective, males, who've been mostly interested. And I'd say people sort of between 30 and 60 years of age. We're offering quite a bit more programming this month and also for next month, and everything's filling up, which is great.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Ms. Russell. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for all of you.
So this is a presentation, item 6.3, Fernie Senior Citizens Society and Drop-In Center, and the report from its coordinator.
Hello, my name is Fernie Baker. I'm the administrator across the street over at the Senior Citizens at Drop-In Center. Thank you for having us in person for the first time in a couple of years, and I appreciate the lower podium. Thank you. I'm sure everybody's very familiar with the Senior Citizens Drop-In Center across the street. We've been a part of Fernie now for 65 years. We've moved around a bit, but once that building was completed, we did move into there in the early 80s, and it's a great location. We're very happy to have it, and it works out great for everybody. I will try and be quick today. As you can see, our mission is primarily accomplished through programming, through social, educational, and recreational programming, and then working with our community partners to provide safe and appropriate supports for anybody really in Fernie. You have to be 21 to be a member. So if anybody would like to join, you're more than welcome to. That was the drinking age 65 years ago. Priorities were different. But yes, we do provide 42 hours of programming a week. That has been happening for about 9-10 months now. We've been back to full levels of programming since COVID. We partner with appropriate with like community organizations such as the ones that are here tonight, the great groups. We also help people in reaching their goals when they reach out to us to provide information on how to create accessible programming. All of COVID and still continuing. We do have pre-made meals that anybody in the community can buy, which helps support programming as well in the facility. We have a digital lending library for members that they can use. They can check out any of the technology for as long as they like. And we primarily, ideally, earn our revenue through earned revenue, and we do grants more so for specific projects. As you can see, we only started receiving funding from the city of Fernie in 2016. Prior to that, it was 100% volunteer run. I was their first employee, actually. Pretty much just because they were too successful and outgrew the rate of volunteerism that they could manage, because people wanted to enjoy all their hard work instead of constantly answering the phone and emails. So thankfully, with support from the city of Fernie, apart from other things, it does allow the seniors to actually enjoy the facility and all their previous many years of hard work. We do have about 40 volunteers that are our main volunteer base. And we do have approximately 100 volunteers on our volunteer roster right now. So we're very grateful for all that the members and non-members actually do for the center. Before we get into the money, I know everyone's coming out of COVID. Pre-COVID, 2019, I suppose, we were at a high of 452 members. Down into the height of COVID, we kind of dipped down to about 218 was our low in 2021. Currently, we're back up to 322 members as of this morning. So we are getting back up there, which is great to see. We just reopened the cafe February 1st, which is fantastic. Like everybody, we've had issues finding staff. So it took a while to get the cafe open again, which is fantastic because it brings people in to see, like, members and non-members are like, they're welcome to it. People really appreciate that. It's a really great social spot for people to just come have lunch. Members make great use of it. It's all homemade healthy food. It's as cost effective as we can make it, and we're very fortunate, and everyone's thrilled that we found James, our new chef there, and it's open again. It's been closed since 2019 or 2020, I guess. So that was a long time coming. So we were happy to see that. Briefly going over the financials, which I do apologize because our accounting program had a massive tantrum and didn't start working until yesterday. So I apologize for there not being comparatives and whatnot. And I did not provide our new budget because the board hasn't even seen it yet. They don't see it until next month because our operating year runs June 1st. We do obviously expect it to increase. Prior to COVID, our budget tended to be around the revenue versus expenses, tended to be around 110, 120,000. What are we at? 2021, it was 101. We had anticipated getting the kitchen open in 2022 again, which did not happen until 2023, so hence the decrease in total revenue of 2022 to 70,000. The kitchen, when it's operating at full capacity, it's a break even thing, but that usually does bring in around $45,000 a year, so it definitely increases the revenue aspect and the corresponding expenses, of course, obviously. So we are thrilled to be getting back up to full capacity in terms of the facility. Rentals have been very, very busy this year now that people can meet again. Well, there's a meeting going on right now, actually, across the street. So that's been really fantastic. People appreciate that. It's a great facility. It is accessible, which we are making it more accessible in 2023 by improving the interior accessibility with the washroom doors and whatnot, which are on the last page there. Because our doors, for whatever reason, are incredibly heavy. And if you have a mobility aid of some sort, you actually can't reach the door to open it to let yourself out of the washroom. So we are looking at putting electric ones in there, which we're thrilled about. So those will be really fantastic. Other than that, yeah, we're just thrilled to be back and operating. We're kicking right along. Everything's been very, very popular. Yeah, and we're just happy to have our 42 hours of programming back with new things as we can, and then having the kitchen open again and being able to welcome people and seeing the membership grow as well, which is fantastic to start seeing people back is really great. So.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Any questions? I will put a plug in for James and the cafe you're running out there. I've had lunch there a couple of times, and it's excellent, and it's a great deal. And yeah, it's right across the street from here, which is doubly
You can get it to go.
convenient, and you can get it to go. And a lot of people came and went, actually. Not to create stereotypes, but a couple of construction workers.
Yeah, no,
Came in and it took their lunch to go.
Yeah.
Which I thought was marvelous. Yeah, well done. There was some talk, James talked a little bit about, and I think you've mentioned as well, hopefully opening up 5 days a week, is that?
Yeah, ideally, pre-COVID, we were 5 days a week. And then we had, when we briefly were able to open for a couple months there during COVID, we used to have 3 days. And then so the kitchen always closes July and August just because it's slow and, and then open again in September. So we're kind of seeing how it goes, the February through June 30th. And then the intention would be to open it up 5 days again. But right now we're just kind of trialing the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and seeing how those goes.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you, not just for your good work in the community, but thanks for accommodating us in the near future.
Yeah, I think it's great. No, it's amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
Not at all.
Especially with new accessible washing doors.
Right? Yeah, it's even more accessible.
Yeah, thank you for having me and thank you for the sports.
Not at all, thank you. Thank you. Item 6.4. A presentation by Ms. Louise Ferguson from the Fernie District Arts Council. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Louise Ferguson. I'm the Executive Director of the Fernie District Arts Council, also known as the Art Station, which is our help. For the opportunity to speak about our organization tonight. The Arts Council's mandate is to provide arts and cultural opportunities for Fernie and the Elk Valley. We do this through a variety of different avenues, such as workshops, gallery exhibits, live performance, special events, and public art. These are aimed at all ages and demographics. Many of our offerings happen in our home art station, and we're very grateful to have this resource. Sorry, I'm really nervous. In this package that we provided, some of the trusted information includes our new strategic priorities, budgets and financial statistics on usage and membership, as well as summary for 2022 and 2023. There's a lot of information there, so I'm just going to summarize and give a bit of context to the documents, but please ask any questions if you want more information or clarification. I'm going to start off with our financials. Our fiscal year is May 1st to April 30th, so the budgets and financial provided reflect this. Each year we do have variable budgets based on major projects that we're doing, so it does change. And obviously the last couple of years have been affected by the pandemic. The operating funding that the city of Fernie provides is on average around 10% of our annual budget. This is a really important 10% because it enables us to apply for further operating funding from the BC Arts Council, who require like a matching component in order for us to be eligible. It also gives us the security of fixed costs, especially those like associated with the building. In addition, it supports staff time to obtain the project grants, as well as bring in a direct revenue that makes up the rest of our revenues. For the current fiscal year, we had quite an ambitious budget. We had some big projects, which included the new mural, new strategic plan, and engagement, and a needs assessment. We're also looking to make a strong comeback to our direct revenue as we came out of the pandemic restrictions. We have been held back a little bit by challenges to staffing, as many local businesses have, both employees and contract workers. In the spring, we were also closed for the washroom renovations, so that did limit some of what we could do. For our next fiscal year, the budget is a draft, which we prepared last year. So in the next month, we'll be looking at our final actuals and have our grants confirmed with funders, so it will be updated. Overall, we are in a stable financial position. We do maintain reserve accounts for operating, and then in specific areas such as the maintenance for the public art and unexpected pottery or restaurant costs. We're also very fortunate to have an endowment fund, which provides us with over 7,000 in unrestricted funds each year. 2022 was a successful year. We continue to provide diverse programs, and we were able to return to more regular offerings since the pandemic. I could talk for hours about like all the different programs, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of highlights. There is further information in our AGM report from last year, as well as in our strategic document. We diversified our youth programs to focus some more on theatre and pottery and digital arts. We're looking to continue to diversify into more age groups for next year, including the early year program for under 5s and add some more school programming. Our community tours also proved very popular. We had 477 kids participate last year. So we're going to continue this program and extend it into the high school. We actually have 3 high school classes coming in the next month. The Wednesday socials continues to be a staple feature for us, and last year we doubled our capacity in order to meet the demand. We're already deep into the planning for 2023, and we're adding some local opening acts for this year. We added a new mural, Grow with the Flow, which is an alleyway opposite the art station. Really has added an additional element to Station Square, and we're already working on plans for our next edition with Fernie Legion. Our pottery program has really developed over the last year, and we've welcomed many new participants through the studio and workshops. And we're really continuing to try and develop this to meet the demand. Feels like everyone in Fernie wants to do pottery. You've got some statistics provided to you. We did close for our washroom renovation, and it did go longer than we anticipated. It really needs to be done, and the results are great, and we now have functional universal facilities, including the accessible store. We did offer some programming while we were closed at the Knox, but things like pottery we couldn't move. Despite this closure, we still had good numbers for 2022, and really saw the increase in the fall, like return to kind of our normal levels, and it just has continued to grow in 2023. Last year, we updated our strategic plan. We did a lot of engagement with the community to inform it. In addition, the ACTAC board participated in a pre-ethics workshops to increase knowledge on reconciliation and developing meaningful engagement with Indigenous populations. As a result, we have a lovely strategic priorities illustration. We're very pleased with this. There is a text document that goes into more detail. I think everyone has one in front of you. There are 6 kind of focus points on the plan. We're already working on several of those priorities, what includes evaluating our programming so that we're just serving the community and the current needs, especially after the last couple of years and the changes and uncertainty. We're in the middle of a needs assessment for arts and cultural space. This project has been years in the making. We have a challenge of reaching capacity at the art station. It's a really good problem to have, but we're looking at how we can best grow for the future to meet the demand. And then another priority is to maintain a healthy and respectful relationship with the city of Fernie. We want to be good partners, and in doing so, support the goals of the community. We're really looking forward to continuing to partner with the city of Fernie with the renewal of the lease of the art station and operating agreement, strengthening our relationship. We'd like to thank you for the ongoing support of the Arts Council and the long-standing partnership we have had. Any questions?
Thank you so much for the person. Any questions?
I just wonder who did this. It's cool.
So we used a company called Drawing for Change out of Vancouver, and they have different artists, and it was a community-based artist, Annalie Paulinson, I'll say her name. I butchered that. So yeah, we picked her because she's a community-based artist, and it was a really great experience because she actually drew live. Once we kind of narrowed down the priorities, we talked about it, and honestly, on paper, it kind of looked a bit boring. And then she just brought it to life. And we've already seen the impact. People are just much more engaged because it's so easy to kind of take the information and understand what we're doing for the next few years.
I have those in my office.
Excellent. And we have more copies of the art station, because it's definitely better in person.
Yeah, that's super neat. A good way to show just how wide ranging and complex that organization is, and that simply for everyone.
Tell them.
If I might follow on Councilor President and suggest, comment and suggest we look at something like this for our strategic priority in our budget process.
Okay.
You understand.
Ms. Ferguson, are your youth programs?
No, go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, I didn't know if you'd seen the plan, so I was just.
Thank you. Youth programs, are they essentially oversubscribed or are
Yes.
they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the challenges we've had in the last year is getting enough youth instructors. And then our busiest time is the after school period. So that's one of the times where we run out of space. So yeah, we've just been trying really hard to recruit more people, and the staff have been stepping in a lot to teach the youth, myself included, which I do love. It's always good to engage with them. So yeah, we could fill up again, you know.
Thank you. Councilor Roddy.
Thanks, Mayor Mildred. Ms. Ferguson, I just wanted to ask you, you're outgrowing the space, so hopefully you're wanting to still use that space. Any ideas where you can like have satellite spaces?
We haven't really reached that point yet. We've hired a consultant, and he's going to bring forward different options and kind of like the pie in the sky to kind of where we're at right now. And even within our facility, we don't currently use 100% of the facility. And so also just trying to best use space that we have, which we have been doing for years, turning storage rooms into programming rooms, and always trying to be like innovative with the space. So yeah, we haven't got specific ideas in terms of satellite, but what's the best approach to that? Is it additional space? You know, like another gallery or programming space, using other people's spaces. Yeah, we haven't quite got that far yet.
It's probably not an old railroad track.
No, we did actually explore that.
For those that don't know, there used to be one at the art station.
Right?
So,
Yeah.
yes, many years ago.
Many years ago. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the work you do in the community, Ms. Ferguson. Just very quickly, you're partnering with the Legion. Is that another year on the Legion?
That is the plan, yes. We're very early stages. We just applied for a grant. And the Legion is actually going to support the project with some money as well. So obviously we've got quite a few steps before that, including a permit, but yeah, that's our next spot that we would like to do. The community has been asking for years, but it's a very, very big wall, so we need a lot of money. Yeah.
Excellent, and thank you for the work you do on the Winter Socials as well. They've become a real fixture of social life in summer in Fernie, and they must be back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of attendance, because it struck me as, yeah, one of those opportunities that people were just clamoring for.
Yeah, when we did them in 2021, it was like, we had a month to make them happen. They like announced the restrictions lifting, and we literally had 30 days, which honestly is insane that we planned any in that time. And it's like the most people we'd ever had out. I think they were just so dying to get together as a community and yeah, be together. And then unfortunately we couldn't finish the season because we got shot, but we were so happy that we managed to get in 3.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, last year, like I said, we doubled capacity because there's so many people show up, and we really couldn't do it without the rest of the community. We had a lot of other groups come out to help us because of the larger numbers. So a lot of groups partnered with us to help make them happen, which is super awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the most fun volunteer opportunities in town.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Are there no other questions? Thank you, Ms. Burns.
Thank you.
Brings us to item 6.6. Presentation by Mr. Mike Merritt, Fernie Museum and the Fernie District Historical.
Perfect timing. Well, while we're there now, I just wanted to comment. How nice it is to have blind people back in the room.
Indeed.
Right? Like it's been years.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
opposed to not like.
Well, it was so, well, yes. Well, as opposed to. That's I almost said it. It's so funny because it's as opposed to on the screen, and in my professional career, I've been doing like communication with people on screens for a quarter of a century. Yeah. And there is just no substitute.
I'm just.
I knew you were, and I would have done the same.
Good evening, Mr. Palmer. Over to you.
I'm fine, thank you. Yes, so thank you, Your Worship and the council for the opportunity to speak. As introduction, I'm a volunteer with the Historical Society. I'm on the board. I'm the current president of the society. So really what I have here is a summary of the report that was presented to you. Some background, since after all, we are a historical society. So we've been around for 58 years. Very long presence in Fernie. One of the chief things we do is operate the museum. And it was actually in 2009 that we signed a 25-year lease with the city. We're 14 years into that now, 11 to go. And it was in September 2013 that we opened up the museum in the home bank building, the BC Hydro building. And interesting with all the bank news that's going on, the home bank was the last bank that went bust in Canada. So this year, though, is a special year because it's actually our 10th anniversary of opening that building. So it's always going to be a good excuse to throw a party. And I think it's important to note that the city of Fernie has been our financial partner for over 15 years once we did move into that building. Currently, in addition to some other facts about the society, we have 3 part-time staff as well as a full-time executive director. And all of them actually help to man the front desk at certain points in time as well, which brings us to the next slide where we had a very successful year this past year. We're in full operation. We saw visitors from mostly Alberta and BC, So the international visitors are still down a lot. USA is building a bit. I think it's important to note that we still get a lot of local repeat visitors, members of the society for our events and talks and exhibits. So, like I said, we had a full year of operations, which saw some good improvements in terms of the numbers and visitation numbers at the museum, even as the ability of us to stay open longer, to increase our operating hours in the summer, which was a big plus. One stat, we had over 3,700 visitor requests for information. We're in a very convenient downtown location, so we've got good visibility in that regard. Big thing too, we're now a financially stable charitable organization. I think we have a strong board that's continued on. We had only one board member transition last year. We've got a good volunteer base and we've got some staff, like I mentioned. The other thing to note though, 6,000 visitors, that still is quite a bit less than pre-pandemic. We saw pre-pandemic on average of 10,000 visitors. So we still have lots of room to grow in that regard. So kind of here a review from last year. It was a very full slate, as I mentioned. We had 14 major events at the university. So something was going on all the time. It's important to know too that we actually completed, Brent Logan is very involved with this. We completed a significant hazardous materials remediation project in the museum. And that actually required us for 2 months, May and June, to close the upstairs exhibit area. But we were able to keep the main floor area going for visitors. So it was quite a challenge to temporarily backfeed all the power and even the plumbing and things like that. But that project is winding up this month actually. And it was quite a significant accomplishment, I think, to get all the high and medium risk asbestos, lead, a little bit of mold out of that museum. There's still low risk items remaining, but with asbestos, if it's in place and you don't disturb it, it's in behind encapsulated paint now, for example, in the basement. So all the there are still low risk items there, but there's no exposure risk. So that was a significant project. The museum, we actually were able to get $224,000 in grants that leveraged the $100K remaining that the city of Fernie had from the Columbia Basin Trust. So that, and then we were able to manage that project and get the trades, which are in very short supply these days in Fernie, and complete that project on time and keep the museum opening. We had a grand opening of an exhibit in July, which was great. We also support a lot of local book launches in the city as well. These are local authors, and so those were events that we held. We also provide some heritage support. There was, I think, 71 specific requests that was in the report for heritage support in the Fernie district, and then as well we help support the city. One of the activities that's ongoing is we're helping to identify you've got historical photos of the old council, and we're helping to identify the people in those pictures. So the 5 major exhibits, just the way it worked out, they were actually all local based, local interest exhibits. The Dragon Tamers was about the Fernie Resort avalanche history, and then the other 4 major exhibits were all local artists and local interest as well. So. Of note with the city as well, we started some discussions last year. There is the Crow's Nest coal mining archives that are in the city's possession. I understand it's the largest archive of coal mining materials in Canada. And right now they're kind of stored okay in the city's possession, but we do kind of have an initiative that we're going to start to see if we could do something more formal with those archives. So that takes us to the plans for this year. Once again, we've got a full slate of activities planned for this year. We opened up just this week another exhibit, Pause and Plight, which is about actually the First World War internment, which Fernie had there was an arena down by the boat launch at one time, and there was attorneys there, and then they moved to Morrissey. We actually had a professor and the artist in town this past week. Unfortunately, the paintings are lost in transit right now, so we're trying to find the artist's paintings. They're somewhere between Calgary and Sparta. So,
Oh, goodness. They're actually lost.
yeah, it was not our responsibility, fortunately, for the shipment of those paintings, but they're trying to track them down. Anyway, we still had a successful opening and gave some talks on the history of the World War I internment. As I mentioned, it's our 10th anniversary year for the museum, so we expect to, maybe in conjunction with Chautauqua, we haven't quite worked it out yet, we'll have a 10th anniversary party. We're also going to, with the success of the hazardous remediation project, there is a 2017 Heritage Conservation Plan that Brett Weldon's well aware of. I know it's a bit in your capital budget to do some of the remediation items, but we do want to, now that the inside of the building is actually very functional and kind of complete, we do want to concentrate on the exterior of the building and the windows in particular, just for the comfort of the visitors and staff. And there's some key sandstone masonry issues that we'd like to address. We've already been investigating some. Heritage BC actually opened up on March 10th, another grant window. They will fund up to 50% of a capital project. And it looks like there's potentially a federal project that we could get for that as well. So
2 minutes, Mike, sorry.
oh, okay, so let's keep going. So Chautauqua was a big one in September. Yeah, and then the board as well commenced a 3-year strategic plan initiative in December. And we're just working that plan, and that will be part of the presentation that we'll give you for when we finalize that plan in the next couple of months. So I do want to highlight the city's support to the Historical Society. It's essential. Key point here, we kind of calculated a rough operating cost of the museum in terms of utilities and staff wages, at about $85,000 a year. So the city's grant is essential for us to operate that museum. It really is. But a key point is that we also have been very successful in raising other funds and fundraising that helps subsidize really up to the extent of $35K in order to allow that museum to operate in a convenient downtown location. So I do want to thank you also for, I see in the proposed budget that we've taken an increase from our 48,275 to 52,000. We'd like to get back to 2020 pre-pandemic levels. So to that regard, I've been in discussion with a number of you about potentially going to a 3-year agreement. I think that would really help in terms of the overhead and the delays that are experienced each year with getting this agreement in place. So if that could be under consideration, that would be appreciated. And the other thing I'd like to mention, it was actually, since I have a little bit of time, the Fernie Heritage Strategy. That was a document that was invested by the city and the society helped to facilitate it. It was presented to the city back in January 2020. And we do want to put a focus on that heritage strategy document. It's key for the arts and the planning and the heritage of Fernie, which of course the Historical Society supports. So that's another initiative that we want to push forward this year as well.
Thank you for that. Questions? Well, congratulations on 10 years in the building. It's an excellent facility and thanks for all the work you've done to it. I mean, that's impressive. And I know I've said this here before, but the museum puts on the best events. Rapid Osiris was an absolute gas.
Right, we're in this 3 in December.
Yeah, it was really good fun. So look forward to your plans for the 10-year party.
For sure. Thank you.
Mr. Cohen.
If I can, your worship, listening to Mr. Pelmer, I heard him reference that he anticipated you had received the financial information that was provided to us. You provided financial information to us?
I was in the full report that was presented. There was also our accounting statements from.
Right, and I was noticing that wasn't on the agenda. I want to apologize, went back and looked through emails and I see that we received it in 2 separate emails to 2 separate people. And so there's misunderstanding on our part. What was the expectation? were you expecting that to be included in the package for tonight? Because if so, I will ensure that council gets copies.
Yeah, because there was the two documents. There was our balance of accounts up to the end of 2022, and then we also had our audited statements from 21.
I will ensure that those are forwarded on to council appropriately and that we find a way to ensure that there's like at least a public facing of that since council's receiving. And I apologize to you all for not having that on there. So thank you.
Anything else from Mr. Palmer? Well, thank you, Mike, for the great work and appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, I will ask the council's for parents for a 5-minute recess. Final break. We're okay?
That's actually good if you have to ask them.
I know.
To say it.
I know.
Small powers.
Ms. Rhodes, can we go on a 5-minute break? Welcome back. We're now at item number 7.1, a wastewater treatment system assessment and compliance strategy. Report from the manager of engineering. Ms. Weir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to provide you an update on our wastewater treatment system assessment and compliance project. So the last report to council on this project was in July of 2022, at which time I summarized the project plan and budget for ISL engineering to complete our next steps. And at that time, they were proposed to include completing the application for waste discharge authorization under the municipal waste regulation, which is MWR, and completing the environmental impact study and feasibility assessment of the sewage treatment plant. And so since that report, we worked with the MOE to verify the requirements of the MWR application, and they have significantly impacted our approach, timeline and budget for this project. So that's the update I'll be providing you tonight. So the MWR application process is a 3-stage process. So we've now completed phase 1 of this process. The pre-application meeting with the Ministry of Environment was completed in November 2022. And at that meeting, the ministry presented us with a draft version of the information requirements table. It's a complicated spreadsheet that outlines in detail the requirements to prepare that complete application. And it's particular to our facility. And then between November and late February of this year, our project team was back and forth with the ministry, several clarifications and versions of that requirements table to ensure that we're all on the same page, and then have since come to an agreement on what the content of the application needs to be. And then we worked with our consultant ISL to update the project plan and budget to meet the ministry's requirements. And so the plan presented in July was based on ISL's understanding of what the process would entail, and then through this, we have a much better understanding of what it actually entails. And so since the writing of this staff report,
Sorry, Ms. Weir, Councilor Hammond.
Just a question, clarifying that last point about the discrepancy between ISL's impression. Like, is that normal in other jurisdictions or in other projects for consultants? Or the province's requirements to be different from what the consultant expected?
Your worship, through to Councilor Hamilton, I think it is fairly normal. We didn't have nearly the level of detail that we had after they provided us that context, and right on the ministry's website, it says, you know, we will tell you what has to be in your application after you get this meeting. So I think our consultant did the best they could, looking at the steps to estimate what they thought would be the level of effort, but no, we weren't overly surprised, I guess, that it was different and expanded than what they thought.
Thank you.
So then the ministry takes the information requirements table and turns it into an application instruction document, and that formalizes the commitment to complete those stated requirements on a certain timeline, and provides us some certainty that when we come to, once we prepare the application and submit it in, you know, several years' time, that the goalposts won't have changed, because we have this document that says what we were committed to in the application phase. And then after the current phase we just completed, the work would move into the applicant work window, where we collect necessary information to complete the analysis and designs, and then the final phase is the ministry review and decision. So I'm now going to review some of the main outcomes of what we learned in our pre-application phase before moving on to our work window plans. So based on this consultation with the Ministry of Environment over the last 3 months, I guess I'd like to provide some insight onto what the main drivers for our cost and timeline escalations are from the requirements from the ministry. So the first one I mentioned at the March 14th budget meeting, which is essentially a differing understanding of the expectation on when the designs would need to be completed. So we were expecting that our application would be made at the end of the field work and analysis, when the effluent limits, for discharge and treatment were defined. And then we thought we would make application, and then we have a period of time to design and construct those upgrades, that the ministry set those effluent limits to. And they clarified that they want us to determine the limits and then complete the required design to meet those effluent limits all in one go, as opposed to them authorizing the effluent limits for which the design needs to meet first. And then secondly, the information requirements outlined by the ministry are far greater than we initially anticipated. Firstly, they're requiring that the existing sewage treatment plant be assessed against the current municipal waste regulations. So it's currently unknown if the existing lagoons and system were designed to meet the MWR. It wasn't the intent at the time of designing them. The MWR wasn't in place. It wasn't the governing legislation at the time. So we'll have to plan to address any shortfalls as part of this application. And then the application also has to encompass aspects of the collection system, including lift stations, inflow and infiltration and overflow locations. We were hoping to just focus on the treatment plant, but the ministry has confirmed that the opposite is required. And then the single biggest cost driver in the increase is the sampling program that the ministry is requiring. So it's far more complex than was originally budgeted by our consultants, who ISL has a subcontracted consultant who is experienced in completing environmental impact assessments, and they had scoped one that they thought would meet the needs, but the new sampling program includes significantly more sampling than was budgeted. And so it was originally budgeted at $63,000, which was expected to cover the sampling and analysis. And now the program that's required by the ministry to meet their expectations is approximately $250,000. And so that $250,000 includes, for example, a $40,000 benthic invertebrate sampling program, which we didn't anticipate, as well as the volume and complexity of the analysis results in $55,000 in just lab costs to analyze the results, and then $150,000 in consultant support for the sampling and analysis of all the resulting programs. And then finally, the IRT also requires several additional accompanying studies that we didn't anticipate. So an archaeological impact assessment, the update to the inflow and infiltration study I mentioned, and then once we have the design, we need to have a commissioning plan, an overflow mitigation plan, a reclaimed water use feasibility study. So a number of different plans that we didn't originally anticipate. So now we are in this second phase here. And until late last week, staff were working under the premise that we would have a 3-year timeline to submit this application. And once I drafted this staff report and the ministry was working on turning the information requirements table into an application instructions document, they indicated they decided to provide the city of Fernie a shorter application window than standard. And the reason for that they gave is that our current operations are non-compliant with the existing permit and the warning letter we received in late 2020. And so the city has assured the Ministry of Environment that we are assigning the utmost priority to this project to try and ensure timely compliance, and are working diligently to gather all the information they required. And then finally, just a note on timeline, the review and decision phase, the ministry has assessed our file as high complexity, which means that they are indicating they will have a 12-month window of review following the application submission. So that does put the timeline for actual construction of any proposed upgrades out to the earliest November 2025. So the change in this timeline is going to result in staff having to rework the schedule and work plan developed by ISL in the last month and attempt to move as much of that reporting and design to occur concurrently with our sampling program, to be able to meet the ministry's November 2024 deadline. So some of the studies we anticipate trying to accommodate in 2023 are the assessment of our existing infrastructure against this regulation, updating the I&I study, the water reuse feasibility study, and starting Indigenous consultation. So this change will have further impacts to the 2023 required project budget, beyond what was captured by the increased budget that Mr. Burdett described in the March 14th budget meeting. And so I will work with ISL in the coming weeks to revise that program and bring an additional report back to council, targeting late April with the budgetary impacts of expediting this work. And then the focus of the 2024 program would still be to complete the preliminary and detailed design phases of the required upgrades. It is envisioned that any treatment process upgrades would be based on a lagoon augmentation approach. I've mentioned this before, not a full rebuild of our entire treatment system, augmenting with additional treatment as required. And it is unknown at this time if any upgrades are going to be required at the main sewage lift station to prevent the overflows of untreated effluent. And then also in 2024, we would complete the rest of the plans required by that information requirements and submit our application. And so, yeah, we continue to work closely with our consulting engineers and the Ministry of Environment to plot and execute an effective path to improve system functionality and regulatory compliance. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Ms. Ware. Any questions? Just a couple for me. The Bentley convergence study, is that typical with a community of our size and within our situation be asked to typically perform a Bentley convergence study?
To be honest, I don't know. I only know that they're requiring it. I don't have access to compare other municipalities.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I have a couple more questions, kind of leading to the same question, which is, so that they've indicated this issue is, our application and the issue is one of high complexity. So do you have a sense that it is a matter of high complexity because of the current state of the upriver? And is that influencing MOE's decision-making in terms of our effluent discharge? Do you understand my question?
Yes, that was discussed at the meeting and how we would account in the sampling program. We are expecting to see, for example, there's upstream and downstream sampling. And so they did provide us some assurance that they're only really focused on the difference between the upstream and the downstream. Can't remember the technical word, but the zone which is under area of influence from our treated effluent discharge, and that they're not looking for us to prove out all of the parameters we will be sampling and reporting on in the Elk River. So I guess, no, I don't think that the complications with the quality of the water in the Elk River necessarily are what's driving our application to be high complexity.
Thank you. It's just that it was also flagged by a statement in the report. I don't know, I'll read the whole sentence, but the environmental impact study will confirm the current mixing and dilution ratio in the Elk, determine the allowable ammonia discharge concentration. And this part, which made me wonder, identify any additional effluent quality requirements that are required. And that for me, I guess, flagged that cumulative effects question, whether that is impacting MOE's decision making.
The biggest one that our consultants have flagged for us to date is the ammonia, the potential for ammonia treatment, which we currently don't have any treatment in place for. So I think that's what I was trying to reference to see with that sentence.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just wondering, the archaeological impact assessment, like how's that related with water?
Mayor Miller, through to Councilor Ramirez, that is just a requirement based on the location of our sewage treatment plant, like any alterations we'd be making to that site will require the archaeological impact assessment. So I don't think it's necessarily specific to wastewater treatment projects. I think it's more in the operations of the site itself. So we are hoping to be able to reference previous studies, but we do have to go through the motions, which I understand can be quite lengthy in timeline and it's
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Weir. That's very detailed report. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Moving right along to item 7.2. Report from the Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities, Mr. Rubin. Thank you.
Three of us
Precisely that.
3-for-1 deal today. It's been a while since I've shared my screen on Zoom, so. Slide presentation. Look at that. Okay, well, I'm very excited to bring to you today, bylaw, the proposed bylaw number 2484. Bylaw for municipal facilities and park user regulation and fees. This is a change from the previous bylaw number 2020. Just a quick overview for those watching at home of how a bylaw is adopted to its final stage. Tonight's presentation is just an introduction and a quick overview. That's why I brought the subject matter experts along with me. So we're hoping we'll leave enough room for some questions and some direction. After that, we'll take the feedback from council and we'll present to our community partners group for running it through that gauntlet for further comments to bring back to the first reading with some of the questions answered that we get tonight. So in the first reading, we basically offer a solution to the problem. Second reading, we make some changes from the discussion that happens at the first reading. The third reading is some refinement and polish in the finished product, and then the fourth reading is implementation. So just a quick history. Let me see, I got my window in the way there. Quick history of how we got to the existing, 2394 bylaw in September of 2020. It was introduced by the Director of Community Services. And this bylaw was to replace the previous one, where it was to improve some operating, or some language around operating seasons for the Memorial Arena, Aquatic Center, Curving Club, and washrooms. It was to set a priority of use, and you'll see that in the bylaw as we go through next. It's to establish a fee schedule more in line with industry best practice and make it a little more equitable for our community groups and people booking facilities. And then to set some rental prices for event infrastructure. We have a list in the back of the bylaw of equipment available for rent. So we've made some improvements to the bylaw after some direction from council after implementing this bylaw in October of 2020. Some of that direction was to improve the structure and schedule of rates that we were seeing some problems with, to implement some cost recovery related to rentals and equipment, and some general improvements that we are seeing in staff and those that are using the bylaw on a daily basis. Hopefully, shade in some of those gray areas of the color. I would like to acknowledge that getting this to council today was very much combined effort. It's been happening ever since 2020. There's been a ton of people working on this, including the previous department, Parks and Recreation Facility Coordinator, Mr. Archie. We had the bylaw team past and previous and current that's reviewed it and had suggestions, and then of course the leadership team review with some polishing before seeing it today. We've also used many municipal comparables, specifically in the last section that I'll touch in more detail. We looked at over 20 user fee bylaws from different municipalities. A lot of them were comparable to the size of us, others weren't. And that was just because the general nature of what we're trying to address that we're seeing as clarity issues have only been seen in larger municipality bylaws. So that's why you're seeing that different stuff today. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hopefully flawlessly open my Word document here. Oh, I messed up. Randomly. All right, I'm going to ask Ms. Christie to drive. And so what we like to do is we've got various talking points throughout the bylaw. And we've tried to highlight the new portions to touch on briefly and provide an explanation to council. So you'll notice in the document there's blue and there's black. We've tried our best to highlight in blue the new additions. So you can see that's splattered throughout. The black is existing and what we're carrying forward from the previous original document. And then anything that's striked out was either unnecessary or we'll touch on that and explain why it was struck out. So starting it off, you see the whereas and whereas this is just empowering council to approve this bylaw to regulate parks and facilities. Definitions is one of probably the biggest improvement to the overall document. It's been expanded to provide more clarity for staff and users applying the bylaw terms and charges. So some of the key definitions were missing from the previous bylaw, added to some confusion, including arena prime and non-prime times and pre-season and post-season definitions was also super valuable. And also the definition for different user groups in that priority of use were much needed to clarify who and who doesn't fit that category. And I'm sorry, you're going to see our comments on the side. We're going to start talking things. Don't have to read right off it. So one of the things that came back to us as a directive from council was to look at a medical disability discount, and that was excluded from the 2020 bylaw. So we've included it here with the definition. And our question to council, and sorry, I forgot to mention, we'll save comments to the end if you can record the part of the bylaw that you referenced with your question. And I'm only saying that because maybe we'll answer it before we get to the end with the three of us doing our thing. So it's one of the things to consider for council. If we want to extend that medical disability discount to caregivers. So someone attending someone with a disability doing some therapy in the pool, do we want that person to also have a discount? So moving around along. So this administrative part, this is to provide an explanation of the approval and appeal process, which was lacking from the other bylaw. You'll see director or designate frequent throughout the document. We changed this from labeling director of community services, director of parks, facilities and recreation, just to more generalize it. So every time there was potentially a change of staff, we wouldn't have to change the bylaws as well. So some general language. So this is another one of the directions from council for cost recovery. So this is a mechanism we put in place, basically related to event support, staff and resources. So this enables us to apply standard rates for equipment using I think it mentions it there, the British Columbia rental rate guide. So that's for equipment, forklifts, skid steers, that sort of thing. And we apply a generic rate for our staff for added assistance during events. So we can recover some of that. Those are the things we don't actually capture in an application for a special event. Usually happens during or shortly before the event rentals approved. So this is a way to just capture some of those extra help from the city afterwards. This section here, opening schedule, so as I mentioned before, the pre-postseason needed some clarity. So what we're proposing here is actually also a cost recovery mechanism. And what it does here is we're offering the suggestion of pre and post-season commitments. Sorry, let me restart. I should just read the notes. So this is to provide a sustainable suggestion to council regarding the booking of arenas for pre and post operation season. So the trigger me to talk are the pre and post season commitments by maintenance staff. So you may or may not know that we have a small maintenance staff who also operate the arena when it's open. Our pre and post seasons, we've operationally changed the available hours open to be booked for one shift by that employee. It works efficiently for us because we have a lot of attention that's needed outside in the spring and also on the flip side in the fall. This enables us to sort of put the programming in one area, and normally things aren't booked in the morning anyway. It's mostly afternoon and evening ice that's being booked and wanted anyway. So what we're suggesting as a cost recovery mechanism is to not put ice in if we don't have 50% of operating hours commitment from our users. So this will prevent us from essentially having ice and operators needing to be in that ice if we're not booked adequately enough to cover at least 50% of the time. So that's what we're proposing here. It also enables us to get a commitment from the user groups in advance, so we can coordinate staff and planning around that, and also the outside activities I mentioned earlier. And as I mentioned, it avoids the unnecessary operating costs related to keeping the ice open without it being used.
All right, so 4.2 F, that one is in regards to the statutory holidays language. So we had in here closed, but we're proposing to put or limited hours. This would give us the flexibility to remain open on stats. A good example is that minute. So being able to open facility as per our bylaw. Very helpful. The next one, C. So this one here is for the annual maintenance shutdown. So the old one had 6 weeks. So what we're looking at is having a bit more flexibility to reduce the shutdown length to the work that actually needs to be done. So if we don't need to do 6 weeks of work, required to shut down for 6 weeks, and the community wants to be.
So this one here related to annual washrooms, you'll notice the on or about language. We ran into a lot of times where we have a hard start May 1st in the bylaw existing. So what we are proposing is flexibility on the opening and closing of washroom facilities in our parks. And this is related to weather. Obviously, the weather changes. Sometimes we could have those washrooms open a week or two in advance. And then on the flip side, if we're looking at colder temperatures, we need to close earlier to winterize properly and avoid the chance of damaging structures. So we're using on or about language, so we're a little bit more flexible, but we still have a date that we're shooting for that the public knows about.
Okay, the next section is priority of use. We've made a few slight revisions to this section from the previous bylaw. Most notably, we've moved up the annual community special events to the second spot here. So this is to align with our current practice. This isn't new, it's not going to affect any of the user groups. We just found that the way that the bylaw was written before was a little bit limiting for special events trying to get into our facilities. And we've added a few extra definitions for these different user groups to provide more clarity on, for example, the difference between a seniors and family group sport activity versus an adult community-based program. In section 6.8, this is our cancellation for facilities. We've added some additional language for facility cancellations to provide more clarity for facility users and to minimize last minute cancellations. So 6.8, this is for the spot rental bookings. So an example of this would be a birthday party. So this is a 10-day cancellation policy that we have written in here.
And then for 6.9, this is for our seasonal renters. So these are the groups that use our facility once a week for a few months, like volleyball, minor soccer, or minor hockey, soccer, are regular users. So it is important to note that we have the same cancellation policy in our rental agreement that groups sign before they book our rental facility, but we wanted to include it in the bylaw for more transparency and for ease of use when staff are administering the facility bookings and cancellations. So we're hoping that we'll be able to minimize the late cancellation so we can rebook facilities and adjust staffing as needed and therefore saving costs.
Amusement devices. We added this section in. There's some new regulation coming from Technical Safety BC where operators that own these amusement devices have to have certification and be in good standing with Technical Safety BC. An example of what an amusement device could be, it's a water slide at the pool. It's also our mobile stage. It requires regular maintenance inspections and to be certified every year with Technical Safety BC. So what we're saying is, if you're having a birthday party and you have a bouncy castle, make sure it's an amusement device that is in good standing with Technical Safety BC. This covers the city for liability and that type of thing.
Okay, part 7, so moving down to the deadlines to submit your request for seasonal rentals. We've made this revision to streamline the administration of the booking process. So as it stands right now, each facility has a different deadline for booking seasonal rentals. We're proposing having 2 key deadlines. So one for outdoor field use, that's due February 28th, and then one for the indoor field use due May 31st. So this will be help us be able to prepare a little bit better in our workloads, intake all at once instead of trickling throughout the year. It helps us, and it's a little bit more of a clear deadline for our groups as well, sticking with the 2 key dates.
Section 7.5, so this one is in regards to the non-exclusive seasonal use permit, which is known as NEPA. And this was initially developed as a pilot program. So including this in the bylaw, it provides the groups an alternative to spot rental bookings, which are time consuming not only for staff, but for the organizations as well. Examples of these groups would be tennis coaching, independent swim lessons, as well as the bike groups that run their lessons out on our parks. This permit provides requirements for running a business, such as business license, as well as insurance, and their annual fee is determined based on their usage.
Okay, so this is probably the largest new section. The original bylaw did not elaborate on use and rules in our parks and facilities. So this is where a lot of that content came from other municipalities that had addressed common problems. So it's part 9. The rules around conduct, use, and advertising. Refers to other existing bylaws and provides department staff and bylaw officers with the authority to enforce the rules. Existing bylaws, very limited, as I said before. So advertising in parks. We've included this because there is essentially no language on what you can do and cannot do parks and facility. So we've included some basic language that we don't see as a huge impact on staff right now. And that is to basically, for the example of, say, the arena, all the board advertising, all the advertisements from the Ghost Riders. What we're proposing is that we have agreements in place with these larger cases, I guess, that includes a lot of cost recovery. So the city is acting on, in that case, taking off, putting down. It's very ad hoc. There's no intake procedure or anything like that. So it's really hard to determine how much staff load comes with that advertising. So we're just wanting to clean it up and put it into agreements. 11B is regarding community groups. So we still want to allow community groups to advertise, for example, minor soccer wants to advertise for registration on Match Church Soccer Field. The intent of this is that it's not to be sold as advertisement to their sponsors for soccer, but it is, the language presented here today does allow those groups to share who their sponsors are. And then there's some basic rules around, special events and the timelines for putting up some advertising and then taking it down following the event. And also just related to our kiosk outside of the arena, we had no cost recovery for that, staff time putting those letters up and down. We just created a bit of a protest through there. Donation collection. This has come up before. You might have been familiar with the Elk River Alliance boat launch vessel. Just some basic language in there that a nonprofit community reinvestment group can apply to the council to put a donation vessel on city property. And then I would take that direction from council and we would make the arrangements to make that. This one here, structures and parks. We've been doing a pretty good job of cleaning up these spot structures around. This is basically just to have anything that pops up in our parks and municipal facility to look and feel like the area that it's in. We've also extended some storage solutions to groups in the form of 10 by 10 100 square foot rental sheds. They can rent those if they give us enough notice in advance to build one. And then we also have some job site storage boxes that my previous experience has proven that works well for groups that want to store some pickleball rackets and some basic equipment that can sit in a locked storage box right at the facility. Yeah. Overnighting in parks. Some language, I've ran into this before, where contractors that are working on a project can camp at the location. A good example is when we did the low E ceiling at the arena. The contractor, to save costs that we directly enjoyed, I guess, from not having them stay at a local hotel, having to book a site that's hard to get at the RV park. They brought their own accommodations and parked in the parking lot. And there was some pushback from the residents. And we're just saying, you know, we want to be able to allow this because we get direct savings from that. That's another cost savings measure.
There's a fellow in the Annex Park too for a while by the
Yes, so I didn't know about that one. So this would be, they would need prior approval from myself or designate, and it would all be on the up now. So offenses, penalties and enforcement. This is some very generic language provided by the bylaw department. And this is just providing authorization for enforcement for the rest of the bylaw. So temporary discretional authority, this just allows us to close a facility or a park in the event of a flood or some required maintenance or a project. And just, you know, keeps it transparent for everyone. Let's talk about the repeal. So you'll see that striked out bylaw 2313. So that was the previous bylaw to the one we're offering solutions to replace or improve. And that's why you see that struck out, because it's no longer a need for this one.
Okay, getting into Schedule A with the fees, this first grid here, we just changed the wording on it a bit. So in the previous bylaw, this section listed it as a recommended fee for user groups. So how that read was that adult community-based program paid 90% of the recommended fee. We just changed the wording to a 10% discount, just for ease of use for staff and for user groups. And then you'll see we've also added in medical and caregiver discounts to this grid here, as well as added those definitions into the definitions section above.
So we removed the fee increase and we put the next 4 years. We have numbers very transparent for the groups to see. So the staff time and equipment and recovery were all that were directed by council were included in costs.
We should note that without this language, with the fee increase of 2% each year, we don't have anything beyond what is listed in Schedule A. So a question to council would be, should we continue with the 2% increase or move towards using the rate of inflation beyond these 4 years?
So full disclosure, as we were reviewing this at the 11th hour, we're like, oh, wait a minute, we just removed the annual increase year to year. So that's why we wanted to talk about this. We can leave this in unspoken and it can just be 2%. But we did want to offer that as a consideration to council follow inflation instead.
So for the drop-in rates, you'll notice for the first 3 years, we used rounded numbers. This is for ease of use for both customers who pay with cash at the pool and at the arena, and for staff who handle cash. So rather than adding the 2% on per year, we've kept the same rate for 3 years and then made the increase in year 4 to adjust for the rate increase. So as you'll see, say for the preschooler, for examples, it's $325, $325, $325, $350. The alternative example, let's see, Adam, because that's the numbers I actually did the math for. Would be $625 in 2023, $637 in 2024, and $649 in 2025. Not the easiest in which to do it.
Just to clarify, these are only drop-in rates. The intention was making it easy for cashiers to handle the cash. Any other transaction that's usually done on the POS machine or a credit card would be as normal. We would look to correct it and round numbers.
So we have in here in blue, the super senior, which would be 80 years and plus. So having this in here as a consideration to award seniors for maintaining an active lifestyle, as well as promoting affordability for this group. And then with the shower fee, you don't see an increase in it. This is standard rate for someone who just wants to come in and have a shower. They're pretty much in shower, and then they're.
Do we get a lot of people who are using just the shower?
Yeah, for the showers, in the summer we do, those staying at the campground. And I should note too, with the seniors, I did look to see how many we had who were over 80 when it passes, and there were 11, so in fact 11 members in the community.
Thank you.
So this one here with the private and semi-private lessons, we do offer these, and they weren't included in the previous bylaw, so this helps with the front desk for clarity, like expanding the definitions of these programs we offer.
So you'll notice that we skimmed past a couple of blue ones there, but basically the bullet point that we did describe is there was a number of facilities that were missing from the list of things we could rent out. A couple examples are the volleyball courts, the pickleball courts. I don't think we had the frisbee golf course on there. We didn't have a rate for the bike park for the day. So we've made those changes and you'll see them in there. So as I mentioned earlier, we have an inventory of special events infrastructure that we rent out. A couple additions there, 20 panels. We just made it clear that we want it installed by a qualified electrician only, just to ensure safety that's done correctly. There's a lot of power running through those things, so we want to make sure it's done by a qualified electrician. Also, you'll note below there, we clarified that the 30% discount for multiple days does not include staff time and operator time. So the question to council is there a desire to increase this inventory? So a couple of things to consider, the asset management side of this. The largest thing on this list is obviously the stage. At some point, it's going to be its end of life. We haven't developed life cycle operating asset management plans for each of these things, but we've got generators in there, things like tables, chairs, they're only good for X amount of years. There should be some sort of replacement schedule for all this. We're working through that as staff, and we want to clarify how many of each thing we have as well for people. But there is some ongoing operation and repair costs that comes with owning a list of equipment like this. And then there's also certification to consider specific towards the stage. The training for this actually has to be done from, I think, Montreal. We have 2 staff that are trained, and they work certain hours, so events don't happen on their schedule. So it's very limited to when we actually can set up the stage, and a lot of time it's overtime hours. So we do rely a lot on other businesses to do the setting up of the stage for us. So just wanted to sort of explain that portion of this list and how it affects costs and stuff.
And how it affects administration. Some of the challenges that we had dealt with in the past, I understand there's been some double booking of the equipment that's happened. We do run into the situation where some groups have to choose their event dates based on the equipment availability. We ran into that last fall in September, busy time for events. We have groups having to push their dates around based on if they can get crowd control fencing or not. And also managing public expectations about the equipment we have. A great example of this is the chairs that we rent out. They're the orange and brown ones from the Wednesday social. So I do have to let down a lot of brides when they're calling the city to ask about chair rental, and I have to let them know that it's the ugly orange chairs, and they probably don't want them at their wedding.
So further on challenges, all related to staff availability, being able to buy this equipment, as well as the equipment expectations. Yeah, having orange chairs when we are expecting really nice plastic chairs for the wedding. Another question would be, do we want to be in the event rental business? Is it something, a service that we want to provide? If there's other companies out there providing the service based on the challenges we're experiencing with equipment and staff time and equipment expectations.
So to follow to that, there's a couple other things struck out there that I think are justified. Film screen, we don't actually own it. It's a shared resource between, I understand it, the college and us. And the film festival, so we didn't want to put it on the event rental equipment just because we don't know where it's going to be or who it's been promised to. Bicycle racks, we don't actually have any to loan out. They're very cumbersome and heavy to ship around the city. But again, we could expand this list and offer more. The special events trailer we've stroked out because we only have 1 trailer. We do offer delivery of event rental equipment, but it doesn't guarantee it comes with the trailer. So we want to use the trailer for larger events that have quite a bit of equipment and make it easier for us to deliver the equipment and save that trailer for what we think is most necessary and not necessarily get to somebody who wants the trailer. Does that make any sense? I will end on this note that I meet with the community partners and they have mentioned the situation with the crowd control fencing and the need for more. So that's one example of those groups feel it is a bit restrictive in this list and that they have voiced the need for more, specifically crowd control fencing to be able to accommodate multiple events or expand on existing ones. That is our presentation and we're hoping you have some questions for us that we can answer.
Thank you. Any questions? Council? Councilor Tuesday.
Under part 4, we mentioned the ice usage my understanding was that was pretty generally filled up. Is it actually not filled up for parts of the year? Like, is that an issue we've run into?
I'll let Ricky answer.
It flexes, it's pretty, it fluctuates quite a bit. In the preseason ice this year, it was quite empty. I believe that first week ice sat almost empty for the entire week. Postseason ice is pretty full for this year, so it fluctuates.
So it'll be 2 things, this 50%. It's also gonna sort of light a fire under staff to advertise more of the available ice. And it'll put some of that onus on our shoulders to sell it more. I don't think we've ever had a need to sell it because we're always open close to preseason. This language, we're gonna try and definitely make sure we have a 50% commitment for the hours open. it's almost there with the user groups. It's gonna give them that extra little nudge, I think, to put it on paper. And then the rest is up to us to sell that extra ice and make the rest of the time.
Thank you, Worship. This actually might be more appropriately directed to Mr. Bornowski, but one thing that struck me as we're going through all the various individual changes is that quite a few of them are what I would describe as very prescriptive. So as an example, the one around regarding pre and postseason dates with a specific date. And I'm wondering about, and another example that I put down was regards to the shutdown clause, which mentions that will be up to 6 weeks. Well, which made me immediately go, what happens then if it has to be 7 weeks and it's enshrined in the bylaw that it can only be up to 6? And so that sort of, while lots of the details in here are really important, and I think it's in the bylaws where people go to find out, can I do X? And it should answer that, and I think it does well. But what I'm wondering is about some of the levels of details feel incredibly restrictive and prescriptive. And I'm wondering if they're within the context of the bylaw, do we have the ability to refer to an external policy document associated with a particular facility, for example, where the bylaw can say there is a policy document associated with the arena, and the arena schedule normally shut down to dates or blah, 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 but they may change according to these particular rules. That way, if something comes up with the arena or 2, 3, 4 years down the road, suddenly we're discovering actually we need people to book their season 2 weeks earlier, or actually we've got extra staff, we can wait 2 weeks later. For example, we don't have to come back here, go through a 6-week process of 3 readings of the bylaw, passing, et cetera, et cetera. So more of a general comment with regards to that, and it's probably more directed to Mr. Bornowski than you guys. That yours is the one that's sitting in front of me.
If I can, if it's okay, I think it's a really good comment, and everything's in the bylaw at this point for council feedback.
Right.
We'll need some stakeholder feedback to make sure that we're aligning with the community needs as well. But absolutely, there's a really great use case to move things into policies that can be amended at the administrative level while still supporting the bylaw at governance level.
Thank you. And then if I may, Your Worship, I have one more follow-up comment. And that was with regards to, I don't know if we're gonna have a discussion about this now or later, but with regards to the 2% annual fix, the long-term inflation rate in Canada is 3.1%, so putting 2% in seems like a poor choice already. So, general comment. All right, thank you.
My question relates to Councillor, or somewhat dovetailed with Councillor McIsaac's initial question, and statement around being too prescriptive, but we've got the bylaw that will be doing cost recovery at provincial rental rate for equipment. And so I'm curious, is that too prescriptive to specify that? But more specifically, the question is, does that rate actually cover our current costs, much like our provincially mandated highway traffic accident recovery rate is significantly underfunded on cost? So I'm just curious if that's been looked at.
That's a great question, and I'm gonna ask Director Hausler if you want to field that one, because they use that book more than we do.
Yeah, through the mayor to councilor, that's the blue book. And those are the rates that we have to use, and do they recover our equipment fees is a pretty big question. Because without looking at like the asset life and ongoing O&M and factoring that in, like, we still have that detail right now, but if you're looking to get a backhoe off the flat deck, we're the cheapest contractor in town, so that's why we need good quotes.
And does that book include any cost escalation?
3 years, yeah, new one every year.
Okay.
We only get it every 2 years through.
Your Worship, I have 2 questions. On sort of related to each other. To Councillor McIsaac's point, I think that, indexing it to CPI makes absolute sense. I was also wondering, if we have a bylaw that says, come back to the council every year, and seek permission for the increase in cost, would that be a feasible way for you to structure this?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
And so how I was thinking was, if we have a language that says index it to CPI.
Yeah.
And could it be a case of staff coming to us every year to seek direction on what the number is going to be like? Can we structure it that way? So that every year we are reviewing this and providing the direction?
As far as.
I may be stepping into the wrong lane a little bit. Absolutely, it is possible.
Yeah.
As a recovering event organizer, I can tell you that knowing what my fees will be 2 years from now allows me to plan a good event 2 years from now. So having the uncertainty around what council may or may not do with fees, if I'm planning a large event and I have a lot of rentals or a lot of space to book, just increases risk or uncertainty on my end.
Right.
And it is a good practice to create a review cycle, whether that's annual or biannual. It should happen before that bylaw becomes too dated. And I apologize.
Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Just to add on to that, the existing bylaw that was presented to council by the Director of Community Services back in 2020. It was then where she said this bylaw would come back in 5 years.
Yeah.
We're 3 years now. So we've kind of done the bylaw at the end of that 5 years, and I fully expect to bring, this back with more improvements in 5 years as we, keep track of all those throughout the use of it. So just some consideration into like how often a bylaw will come to the council, I guess.
Well, it strikes me, sorry to Councilor Ramadas's question, that if there were a mechanism that it didn't have to come back for review annually, provided it was following, CPI, for example, there was a mechanism such that if something, untoward happened in terms of that cost, up or down, that it would then come before council, which would provide the certainty required for planning, unless something unusual happens.
I think that's a better resolution to it, yeah.
That's what she said.
Sure, your worship, if I may, given that we're subsidizing most of this to the tune of roughly 80%, and we've seen or we're seeing a mostly unpopular tax hike, perhaps it may be wiser to increase our cost recovery, obviously not all the way, but some way further than inflation. I would also add that the CPI rate, being a basket of consumer goods, doesn't actually reflect what we're paying for here. I would say that construction costs have certainly exceeded the increase in the CPI because you're dealing with tradesmen, steel, equipment, physical items. And I don't think those costs are going up at anything close to CPI. Thank you.
Councilor, what do you tell me?
Like just further to the CPI, would it would be the previous year's CPI, would it not, that they determine? Used for a rate? Like example, I see wage increases for certain groups were based on the 2022 CPI. And are we talking BC CPI or federal? If we were to go that way.
So I ask the Director of Border to answer that question.
And it's probably a fair question to ask Director Bird and then bring back some options.
Yeah, I am taking notes and I am recording some of the comments by Councilor.
Thanks, Director.
Thanks for the interruption and to repeat it again. You have another question?
Well, I need.
You have your hand up. So I have.
No, I just, I think,
Okay. Councilor Ramadas's next.
Thanks, Your Worship. Another thought I had was to just ease the administrative burden on the asset management plan, maybe having some kind of a threshold so that we don't do asset management plan for every little chair and table that would be Yeah. Something that, I don't know what a good threshold would be, $10,000 or $20,000 or something, I don't know, just a thought, how be better. I can understand generators, for example, but
Yeah.
other things, yeah, maybe.
Thank you. Two questions. You started off the presentation with the question about thinking about medical disability and whether that discount gets extended to caregivers. And I'm not sure if I was mistaken, with your final slide with the actual discount rates had medical caregiver at 100% discount.
Yeah.
See that correctly?
Yeah, so we flagged it as a question, you're right, it is also in the rate, included in there in blue. And then,
Okay, and I support that.
As do I, yeah.
I think
you know, a lot of thumbs up, so.
to be able to get individuals with disabilities into the pool and make it financially feasible for all of them.
No, there's a bit of an assumption on that, it probably wasn't gonna be removed.
And then the second question, kind of on the topic of rates, if I noticed properly, we have toddlers or infants is 0 to 2 and then toddlers 2 to 5. Is there any rationale for charging the 2 to 5-year-olds if we're not charging 0 to 2?
Your worship, good council, it's common practice from what I've experienced in other municipalities that I've worked for, that under 2 it's free, and then from 2 to 5 it's.
Okay.
It's usually a cheap rate, that's 2 to 5, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and like, I guess my thought is, maybe from a cost recovery perspective, it doesn't make sense, but if we're trying to enable more individuals and, thinking about children and young parents, they're the ones who are struggling or dealing the most with cost escalation and the cost of living with young children. If it might make sense, to make it 0 to 5, like preschool age children are free and add another $1 to every other user to make up whatever that cost might be.
Sorry, just for clarity, you're suggesting
5
combining infants with preschoolers, basically.
Yeah.
And then adding those costs to other users to make
Keep
up.
balancing it out up $1.
Okay, we could bring something
Or
back
something along those
with
lines.
numbers of how many of that age group and what that might look like.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to make a quick comment with regards to the discussion about CPI and staff coming back. Setting a general rule for it is much better. It means that staff constantly have to come back. If there is an unanticipated situation, staff always has the option to come to council and ask. We don't have to build that in. You're there.
Fair.
So we don't have to create a resolution saying that they can come back, but it's gonna be more than CPI. That exists.
I don't think it's creating any resolution.
Yeah, and I wanted to speak to Councilor Ramadas because I felt he was identifying a potential problem.
Yeah.
By putting a number in place, but in fact, there's already an existing solution.
Sure.
The second thing I wanted to say with regards to the discussion about fees and so on is, I think it's really important for this table to remember, fees are regressive, right? The flat fees for people more disproportionately affect people with less means. One of the values of being in a society with taxation is taxation, even with property taxes, is more or less progressive and affects people differently with means and so on. It is a better way to deal with shortfall for amenities that are needed by the public than increasing the fees. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have user fees, we absolutely should. But I'm wary of rapid increases of user fees. I'd rather see that happen at taxation level where that cost is more absorbed by the people looking for it. Just a general comment about this.
Fair enough. And I appreciated Ms. Hill's response about industry standard. If we're operating the same as other municipalities typically are.
Very
good. Any other questions? Councilor Tucson.
On 3.11, the city may apply extra charges, that's set. Is there any sort of, time constraint or anything on that? I mean, if I was an event organizer and through a mistake somewhere along the line, if somebody were to say tack on a bunch of overtime that I didn't anticipate or something, that might well be a catastrophic thing for me. So is there any sort of,
Worship Clearing Council, so typically we work quite closely with the groups leading up, when we're creating a permit for the event, identifying, say, if they need a revamp conversion or they need a generator or some kind of additional work needs to be done by our maintenance staff. So we are in constant communication leading up to the event. And then we typically have the permit finalized within a few days after the event. So on an administrative level, that looks like me sitting down with our maintenance staff and finding out how much overtime was done, which equipment they use, using the blue book to identify those rates. But we are very clear with the event organizers that that's part of the process going into the event.
Thank you very much. Do you want to comment a little bit on this special events?
Oh, when I move, I can take it. We do have a new application that was developed by my predecessor, Amy, the special event application form that comes in, and it has a section where it has all the equipment, rentals and other items that are required for events included in the form. So we are able to see what the equipment needs are going into an event or even before we create the permit. Which has been really helpful to plan out staff time, making sure that equipment is available. Trying to be best prepared and helpful to the group if we can be.
And we're also getting in the practice of doing follow-up event meetings. So for larger recurring events, the team's gotten better at meeting with those groups and discussing what was good and bad and how to improve. So that special events process is like, or that document for a larger event is a living document that we're improving on year to year. And we know what's coming, they know what's coming, we know the cost, so it's getting a lot more transparent.
And I hope this isn't too pedantic, but the definition of damage deposit seems incomplete to me. It should reference that those monies are returned to the payer if at such time there's no damage or there's no, or less the amount required to cover the damage. And I felt like amusement devices required a definition. Yeah. You provided an excellent definition, Mr. Logan, but
Hopefully we're recording.
Yeah, I did wonder and this is just out of curiosity, the 5 million general liability insurance, has that been an issue for any community groups, or do people pretty much?
Your worship, I haven't encountered anyone who's had an issue with it to date.
Good, thank you, because I know it can be expensive.
If I could add just a little context to that, we've actually come along, predecessor to Ricky, also kind of got us out of the insurance broker business, where we were more or less acting as an insurance broker, like middleman, for groups that needed insurance, and now we just provide them with a link. Much smoother process.
Out of curiosity, were we providing wraparound insurance for them, essentially following on the city's insurance, or how was that working historically?
No, I mean, I think we're just more or less providing recommendations on what kind of coverage they needed, and then getting them in contact with the right people to get that insurance.
Okay.
Where that in itself, I think, maybe comes with some liability, so we're glad to be out of that business.
Thank you, Your Worship, to council. There's a really useful municipal insurance association, MIABC matrix of activity type and risk versus the amount of insurance whom should have related to that activity type and risk, and is simply based on that, where the MIABC our insurer recommends we plug the different types of activities.
And it's, the recommendation is, it starts at 5 million, generally. Councilor Ryan,
Thank you, Worship. I was just wondering if the staff is seeking direction on whether we are in greater business, like event management business or not. Is that?
well, it was certainly one of the questions we received is, do we want to stay in this?
Yeah.
I guess I could frame that differently. Do we want to expand that inventory? Because there seems to be a need. Or do we want to hold steady with what we have, or do we want to consider potentially getting rid of some of these items that we could bring back more information about?
Yeah, before I would feel comfortable answering that, I think you just put your finger on it. We need a bit more information about what's missing, what we would potentially add, whether it's to existing inventory or not, and what we would, because we either never rent it or it's too high maintenance or high cost, we would scotch from those. Councilor.
Thank you, Worship. If it's okay, I can provide a little bit of historical context about how the city got into the event rental business. And it was back in my very first term, so 2008 to 2011, there was quite a discussion around how many events in town were struggling to acquire the necessary equipment to put it on. And one of the things that was being noticed is, especially smaller groups. So, you know, I think the kinds of examples that would be thrown out of the time are things like Girl Guides and things like that. The types of events that they wanted to put on, the cost of going out and renting a whole bunch of this equipment essentially meant it wasn't worth them to put on the event because of the cost. And it was a very strong push at the time to elevate the number of festivals and events that were going on in the community and enable local groups to do that. And I think that's actually been sustained over the last 15 years or so. That's sort of the background of why that decision was made to go out and buy a stage and so on. I'm not sure if that same decision would be made if the same set of requirements were brought to the table today. But just as, and not that we're deciding anything for tonight, but in going forward, that was sort of the environment that was going on at the time of the decision to get a bunch of this equipment like the stage and generators and all those. And of course, what's happened is as specific holes and that have been identified over the years, more pieces have been added in there. But I do think it's a really fair question to ask whether the current environment in Fernie still necessitates the city being an event enabler, if that's still part of the desire of support for local groups, tourism, etc. I do think that's a worthwhile discussion to have whether that's, we're still in a state where we want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it strikes me as one of those questions we would want to explore in some detail because, you know, the law of unintended consequences might suddenly find certain groups are no longer able to mount their events for that very reason. But comes to mind.
If anything, I would think that there must be more number of user groups now compared to 2009, like just a guesstimate here. So the need might be even more, you don't know.
Yeah, and at the same time, there's both businesses has grown to also supplies the same service. So you know if it's cost comparable or what the difference is, but the environment has certainly changed in that time.
I do have one thought, sorry.
Councilor Schuster.
I'm of two minds on this personally, but it seems to me Fernie is a extremely vibrant place with tons and tons and tons of events, like an inordinate amount. So perhaps that's a result of our odd event support, you know, it's perhaps stems from that. So I don't know, I think we definitely need a big discussion around numbers and think that through, but we should keep in mind, like, that is something that sets us apart, actually.
Sorry, is that true? Do we know if other municipalities do similar event support? Do we have a sense of that across the province or even regional?
From a lot of the bylaws I looked at, I don't see an events festival infrastructure list. However, it's very common when you rent a facility, it comes with tables, chairs, and we're getting good at sharing with people who rent, say, the arena, that it comes with this many chairs and it comes with this many tables. I don't think to the extent of offering cable trays, extension cords, those types of things. I think there's always going to be a need for traffic calming bumps, crowd control fencing, garbage cans, recycling cans, those types of things. And limiting the amount of chairs, say, we would offer is something I'd like to restrict, and tables, like, would make it easier for staff to deliver those and not have, 300 chairs available to haul to Annex Park. Those types of things, where I think the public sector could probably take over some of that.
Councillor Hamilton.
Private sector. To further that statement to Councillor Ramadas's comment earlier about like threshold, I see a lot of value in us maintaining some of the larger equipment, but also at the same time having chairs and tables available for the community center, for the arena, for a rental. But yeah, extension cords, that sort of stuff, even generators to a certain extent. I wonder, is that something that's we need to be providing, or that the private sector can, if the opportunity is there, someone will step up and fill the void. But I do look forward to having a more robust discussion once we've got a little more information on some of these topics.
Councillor
I did hear Director Logan talking about public engagement and actually getting some kind of a needs assessment from people. Should know the answer to this question, but is that budgeted? Like the cost, the money required to do the public engagement is that budgeted around 2023?
It's budgeted, no, sorry, your worship, through Councillor August.
No, the engagement was going to be presenting it to the community partners group that I meet with every second Thursday, which would make up all the groups that are presented here today. That's going to be a good pulse check for heading in the right direction, public point of view. We'd also like to further reviewing this bylaw with some of our key user groups, like under soccer, Western Hockey Club, winter hockey, volleyball, those types of groups, and see if there's any concerns they have with what we're proposing today, and if it's going to limit their ability to do programming, that type of thing. So that's the type of feedback that we're going to get, which I believe captures, the majority of the business we're doing at the recreation desk at the Aquatic Center. And we'll compile that feedback and present it to the council.
So I guess your request is it's kind of want you to continue down that path and come back on that. I think you can tell from the conversation that that's absolutely. I did, and sort of respecting everybody's time this evening, unless there's any more burning questions. Would appreciate you doing that. And my closing comment is, because I hope to be one, thank you for the super senior. So I can jump into the pool at my 80th birthday for free. Appreciate life goals. Life goals, exactly right.
Still have one.
Well, thank you so much for that. It was very informative. Appreciate your work. Thanks for making that. On that note, we will close this committee of the whole. Thanks everybody for your participation in that. Good conversation. Appreciate it. Thanks for all the presentations as well.